there are the caucus sessions that have been happening, and we just want to make sure that we can proceed getting into the resolutions. Before we do that, because we did say we would be back resuming at 1:45 very shortly. Of course, the rules of procedure are based on the charter. The rules of procedure call for any emergency resolutions that meet the criteria to be dealt with first. So we do have one emergency resolution that will be presented. We will deal with that first, and then we will deal with on-time resolutions. And if there is opportunity at the end of the day, we will then start going to late resolutions that have again met the criteria. So we'll be following that order, and we'll just confirm some of the resolutions will be put together into baskets so that we can present them together and hopefully be a bit more expedient. Before we start, microphone number 2. Housekeeping.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Cheryl Casimir, and I'm chief of my community of which is a member community to the Nepinak Nation in British Columbia. I just wanted to quickly say a couple of words in the event that I may not be able to come up to the mic later on this afternoon before I have to depart. I was hoping that Veronique was available so that I could apologize to her for how she was treated when she was trying to chair a very difficult segment of our agenda with the members of the ministers, members of government, and the Prime Minister. And I know that, you know, that was probably the toughest part of the agenda that we would have had today. And for someone as young as her to step up and try to take on a role such as co-chairing the Assembly, it's a huge and daunting task. And I thought that how she was treated by some members of this delegation was totally inappropriate and unacceptable. You're yelling about wanting our youth to speak, or wanting our youth to be a part of processes. Well, we have a youth who was standing up there doing a very important job. And I think that she deserves better treatment than that. She deserves some respect and, most importantly, an apology. So on behalf of myself, even though I wasn't a part of that, I apologize to her for her being subjected to that kind of behavior. Thank you.
Thank you. So our colleague Veronique is not in the room, but we will convey the message. Thank you so much for that. Miigwech. So we had recessed until 1:45. We will reconvene, and we will get right down to business. As I indicated, rules of procedure call for emergency resolutions to be dealt with first. So we'll get right into it. We are dealing with emergency resolution number 2. So if I could have that put up on the screen, please. Emergency resolution number 2. The resolution was handed out here in the Assembly room, also distributed in the caucus sessions. So although it was not in the packages, you do have a copy. So I will go through the resolution, and I will not read the preamble. I'll get right to the operative clause, and I just want to make sure I have it up on my screen here. It is up on the screen here. It is, again, emergency resolution number 2. It's titled Safeguarding First Nations Children and Holding Canada Accountable for its Canadian Human Rights Tribunal Legal Obligations. The mover is Chief Vicky Chief. I will confirm that Chief, thank you, you are here. Chief.
Not from Ontario.
Okay.
It's Quebec.
Quebec?
Yeah.
Just thank you. We'll make that correction. Temiskaming First Nation, Quebec. Thank you. Chief Vicky Chief. Seconder is Proxy Aaron Nicholas from Tobique. Is Aaron Nicholas here? Yes? Yes. Thank you. So we have the mover and the seconder in the room. So I'll go down to, therefore be it resolved, if we can get Encore to scroll down. It's on page 2, and it reads, "Therefore, be it resolved that the Chiefs in Assembly, 1, support the November 21, 2024 Tribunal Letter decision on Jordan's principle to address Canada's non-compliance. 2, confirm that the $47.8 billion is only the floor for negotiations to achieve a long-term reform of First Nations Child and Family Services, FNCFS. 3, direct Canada to obtain a new negotiation mandate within 30 days of this resolution passing to achieve long-term reform of the FNCFS and Jordan's principle in full alignment with AFN Resolutions 60, 2024 and 61, 2024. 4, support regions, parties, and the National Children's Chiefs Commission, NCCC, to undertake any legal actions should Canada fail to obtain an adequate new negotiation mandate within 30 days. The First Nations and Assembly will deem Canada to be dishonorably in violation of the duty of diligent implementation flowing from the honour of the Crown constitutional principle. 5, direct Canada to provide adequate funding, including reimbursement of legal fees at actual cost to an entities determined by the NCCC to support its work. 6, direct AFN to call on Canada to not seek judicial review of the November 21, 2024 Tribunal Letter decision on Canada's non-compliance on Jordan's principle. 7, direct AFN to call on Canada to take immediate and effective measures to fully implement all tribunal orders, including November 21, 2024 Tribunal Letter decision on Jordan's principle. And finally, number 8, support the NCCC participation in further legal proceedings, including before the tribunal, to ensure First Nations children, youth and families receive the full benefit of existing tribunal orders to seek additional remedies as required. So that is the resolution before you. The mover and seconder are here. I'll ask if they wish to address the Assembly. Mover, microphone 1.
Chief Vicky Chief, I'd just like to remind the Chiefs in Assembly that the proposed $4.8 billion offer was subject to annual parliamentary approval and other budgetary decisions with no guarantees through a multi-year funding statute. Since we've just read the resolution, I think it speaks for itself, and we would just like to reaffirm our unwavering commitment to fighting for the rights of First Nations children and families. And we'd like to express hope for a future where all First Nation children can thrive in their nations. And we call for unity and solidarity among First Nations in the pursuit of justice and equality. The onus is on Canada to eliminate discrimination.
Thank you. Seconder at microphone 1.
Sorry. Kolasi Kolpa, Nilnet Louise, Aaron Nicholas, Najeo Nagutkuk, Willistagawig Nil, Chquabanaki Najeo, Skijin Nil. My name is Aaron Nicholas from Tobic First Nation. I'm proxying for my chief, Ross Purley. And I just want to acknowledge that we are on the unceded and unsurrendered land of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe. I'm going to read a few things here too. The Canadian Human Rights Tribune ruled in 2016 that the Canadian government is racially discriminating against First Nations children in care, notably by drastically underfunding First Nations children and family services. Yet the disparity persists. This disparity reflects the system that does not adequately provide for First Nations communities' needs. We demand that the Canadian government provide First Nations determined needs-based funding for their children and family and end the discrimination and stop it from happening again, as ordered by the Canadian Human Rights Tribune. My First Nation has worked on establishing our own child and family law for the last 7 years. The law is ready now. It's even translated in our language. Now we're in conflict with Canada for the funding. Not only am I seconding this resolution for my community and the children of my community, I am doing it all for the children across the country. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will open up the floor for any discussion on emergency resolution number 2, and I see microphone number 2 has been standing there, so microphone 2, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Cheryl Kasmer, Chief of ACAM. I also want to take the opportunity that I didn't earlier to acknowledge the land of whom we're doing our business on, the Anishinaabe and the Algonquin peoples. These amendments that I'm proposing have been passed by or vetted with the mover and the seconder, and they've accepted the proposed wording. The reason I'm going to read it into the record is because it hasn't had a time to be translated into French as well. So under the whereas clauses, we're looking to add right after I, a new J and a K. So J would be, the tribunal also ordered Canada to consult with the parties on several issues with the goal of reaching consent order requests, and recognize that it would be beneficial to have all parties at the table, including First Nations who are not part of the proceedings. K, the British Columbia First Nations Leadership Council, which was granted interested party status and intervened in the non-compliance motion, can only participate in these consultations with the consent of all parties. On December 4th, 2024, Canada has responded that they do not consent to the FNLC participation in the consultations. So that's under the whereases, and 2 additional, therefore be it resolved clauses. So in number 9, fully and publicly support the British Columbia First Nations Leadership Council participation in the consultations ordered in the November 21st, 2024 tribunal letter decision on Canada's non-compliance on Jordan's Principle, as well as any request from any other regions to seek interested party status in this Canadian Human Rights Tribunal case. And 10, direct AFN to call on Canada to retract their opposition and to support the FNLC participation in the consultations ordered by the tribunal in the November 21st, 2024, in the 2024 letter decision on Jordan's Principle. Those are the additions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So we've done a good job reading those into the record. If I can have you stand by, please, up on the screen. So we do have the 2 versions. If we look to the, and I'm going to get Encore to go to page 2, the bottom of page 2, that is the whereas. We now have the addition of paragraphs J and K. If I can have you scroll up, please. There it is. And if you can just have a quick look, I believe that that is exactly what you just read into the record. Otherwise, I'll have to read it again. Just want to clarify. That looks good? Okay. If I can have Encore scroll down to the final page. We now have, under therefore be it resolved, numbers 9 and 10. If you can please look at that, if that correctly reflects your proposed amendment. Yes, okay. So with that, I will ask the mover and the seconder if they concur. Mover is good. Seconder, you're okay. Alrighty. I'm now going to go online. No hands raised online. So back to microphone 1. You actually walking away?
Chief King, Kiasagi, Nepinak, Gulbey First Nation. When you talked about the floor, right? And again, there was a reference to the order itself. Do we have a list of that order that's available? What did the tribunal actually say about the compensation? Or was it silent? Was it arbitrary? I'm not clear on that. I have asked fellow chiefs, they don't know either. And maybe we can get some clarification on that in terms of what did the tribunal order and whether or not was it the amount that was ordered, or was it silent on the order? Miigwech.
Thank you. So that is a question, and the only people I can look to right now are the mover and seconder, who are not technical people. I'm not sure if you're able to respond.
Don't know that it would be up to us to kind of explain that. I'm sorry.
So I'm not sure if you have any.
Answer I could.
Yeah, so I'm not sure, mover, if you have any technical support or anyone that you can rely on to answer the question. And again, we're all aware, I mean, as chiefs, you're not the technical, you're not the technicians on the specific issues. So we might come back to that. They're just having a side discussion. I will turn to microphone 2, but realizing that the mover and seconder are in a discussion. So microphone 2.
Good afternoon, Regina Crowchild, Minor Chief Sutina. I just have a question, a couple questions. I'm wondering, see, being December and Christmas is coming up, there's holidays. I'm just wondering, direct Canada to obtain a new negotiating mandate within 30 days. I don't know about the mover and the seconder, if that's adequate days. I don't want to limit them to that if they don't have the time because of the season. And on the other one, on 5, I would suggest that direct Canada to provide adequate funding, including reimbursement of legal fees at actual cost, period, instead of, and delete to an entity determined by NCCC, because the court will determine the fees that have to be paid.
Thanks, Proxy Crowchild. If you can work with the resolutions team right beside you, and we'll get the correct terminology. But on the first request, the 30 days, mover and seconder, thoughts on, it's not really a request, but consideration.
I do believe that the Prime Minister can order Minister Haiju to, within 24 hours, make that mandate.
Thank you. Microphone 2, please.
I'm just questioning that, you know, because, as you know, the government has always have excuses. You know, I never trust them, but if you trust them, fine. Thank you.
So we're just working on with the resolutions team on the second request. Are we okay? So that would be under number 5, therefore be resolved on the final page. If I can have Encore go to number 5 and put it up on the screen just so that we can see it here in the room. We're just waiting for the team to make that correction. Yeah, been mad that we Gianji Bigadeg, you guys are with Dinano, Gianji Stuach. So we have it here, number 5, mover and seconder. If you can please have a look up on the screen. So it would remove the last part of the sentence. So it would end at actual cost, period, and removing to an entities determined by the NCCC to support its work. Mover and seconder. You don't agree? Okay, so mover and seconder do not agree. They'd like to leave it the way it is. Next is online. Don't see any hands. Back to microphone number 1. Chief King.
Chief Wilfred King, Kiasagi, Nepinak. I think we just passed resolution, Chair, where we said, we told the AFN, get the hell out of this business. Now we're directing them again to get back in the business. Could we get some clarification on that? Because we were just passed a resolution said AFN has no business in this anymore, and now we're directing them to get back in. So I need a clarification on that. They're contradictory resolutions.
Thank you. So just looking to the mover and seconder. They're having a discussion, but just bear with us. We'll suspend for 15 seconds or so. Sorry, we're just on a quick recess dealing with that question. Is it in response to that question or a different matter? Different matter? Okay, we'll come back to that. Just please bear with us. Thank you. Obviously, as co-chairs, we're not the ones that will be providing information. We just want to make sure that there is a proper response to the question. Thank you. So what we're going to do, you're just consulting here. Yes, if you're able to speak to it, and then back to the other point as well, and then we'll come back to it. Microphone 1.
So what we're directing AFN to call on Canada not to seek a judicial review. So that's different than having AFN in the negotiation.
Okay, thank you. For further clarification, what I'm going to do is ask for some, I'm just looking at the discussion here happening offline. While we're doing that, I'm going to call on either the Resolutions Committee, the Resolutions Team, or AFN Legal, if they can further add to that, put you on the spot, to be able to respond to that question of whether this resolution is in conflict with a previous resolution. So I'm not going to single anyone out, but I'm looking to the Resolutions Committee or AFN Legal. But we are having a side huddle on that question behind microphone number 1. I just want to make sure the microphone is off while they are discussing that, and to see whether that resolves the question. Otherwise, if we can have somebody standing by from the Resolutions Team. May have been matapi hawak, yung nagatasan damwats. Microphone 1, please.
In paragraph 6, and 7, if we take direct out of those two clauses, 6 and 7, direct AFN 2 is how it should be removed, 6 and 7.
So remove direct AFN in both paragraphs?
Yep.
Okay, and mover and seconder, you're okay with that? Okay, I think that resolves the question then, Chief King. Okay, so the amendment is to remove the words. It's up on the screen. It's crossed out in green. Remove the words direct AFN, and also in number 7. So number 6, paragraph 6 would start with call on Canada, and number 7 would start with call on Canada. Okay, so that answers that question. Now, there was another issue that you were going to respond to, Mover.
Yeah, please do.
Was there another amendment already?
What the floor was.
So, the red line, your proxy, correct?
Yeah, I'm proxy
it's
for
right there.
Stilaco.
Yeah, you had it on earlier, I know that.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Okay, go ahead,
my
microphone 1.
I think, I'm just to be clear, like the remedies that were ordered back, starting in January 2016, there was 4. At the time, it was INAC was ordered to cease its discriminatory practices regarding the First Nations Child and Family Service Program. reform the First Nations Child and Family Service Program, cease applying the narrow definition of Jordan's Principle, and take measures to immediately implement the full meaning and scope of Jordan's Principle. It goes on further to talk about that, to seek the funding or the information regarding the compensation sought for First Nations children impacted by child welfare practices. So that started in 2016, and then since then there's been 30 more orders. And so when the compensation order, if you recall, the first time Canada was ordered to pay $20,000 per victim, we then went back to court and we were able to prove that Canada was willful and neglectful, and they knew what they were doing. So then they were ordered the $40,000 per person compensation. Class action, there's two different types of laws: Canadian human rights law, class action law. Then the class action we ended up negotiating that. It started at $5 billion, it went to $20 billion. And then we were able to get it to $23.4 billion. So the amount of that class action was $23.4 billion.
Thank you, and I think that was clarification to a question that was raised earlier as well. So I'm going to go to microphone. You're good with that? Okay. Microphone 2. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. It's Chief Adam from the Athabasca Chippewa First Nation. One of the things that we, the chiefs, have to address when it comes to the AFN, and to remind the body of the AFN that you are just an advocacy body that speaks on our behalf of the First Nations of Canada. You are not to lead the First Nations in the direction of negotiations with our treaty. The treaty was intact and given to us by our ancestors who signed treaty on our behalf. Alexander Levelant was my chief that signed treaty. He was a member of the Athabasca Chippewa First Nations who died in 1918 with the pandemic, and is buried in Edmonton with 5 other bodies on top of him. When he signed treaty for us to carry forward the message that was promised in the contents of the treaty. He did not sign treaty to carry forward, to give to the AFN our portfolios. You are there to speak on matters that should be before us. The AFN should go to the Prime Minister and start talking about the economic embargo that they have upon our people. Because if they release us from economic embargo, where it says on the treaty that you can't even barter, or you're allowed to barter what you have, but you cannot barter within your land and resources. We are tied. And it's time to quit begging this government or Canada to give us handouts. Once we lift the economic embargo, the First Nations are free to whoever they want, when they want, for companies to come into the territories and to make business deals where nations are profiting like it should be. Not Canada, not the provincial government, not the municipalities, not shareholders. Where I come from, 73% of the natural resources go out of this country. 8% of the national debt, we contribute 8% to the PD, whatever you call it, and yet out of that, 73% leaves this country. Why aren't you guys talking about those kinds of numbers that are leaving this country when the resources are coming from our lands? That would make you a political body to advocate when it comes to natural resources on behalf of the First Nations, because you have the front door open at Ottawa where we don't, because we are situated, like myself, northeastern Alberta in Fort Chipewyan, isolated community. The only thing that the AFN ever did was to negotiate the failure of residential school claims, to negotiate the failure of day school claims and now in the process of the failure of the Child and Family Welfare Act. It's time that you change your political position and leave the negotiations to the First Nations people of this country and not take those positions, because we did not put you to be there as a law-abiding citizens for Canada to hold order against us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Adam Miigwech. I had a hand raised on Zoom earlier. I don't see it now, but I just want to confirm in case it was a proxy online. I don't see it on my screen, but the proxy that had the hand raised online. I'm going to take a minute here. I don't want to bypass anyone. But if I had the proxy online with the hand raised, if we can have you speak, please. Otherwise, we'll move on very shortly. Don't see a hand raised. I think I'm good. So I'm going to come back to microphone 1.
Good afternoon, Chief Wilfred King, Kiaslag and Schnabek. Mr. Chair, as a point of order, when our resolution is on the floor and it's being discussed or debated, the substance of that resolution should be discussed, not other matters. Like, I understand the importance of this, but we have to stick to what the substance of the resolution. And I think we would save half a day if we did that. So just as a point of order.
Thank you. So point of order has been raised. Again, point of order is discussed by the co-chairs collectively. Just give me 1 second. Thank you. So the point of order is recognized. Thank you. And just a reminder that if we can stay on topic, please, with the resolutions we are dealing with. As co-chairs, we do not know what someone is going to say until after they've said it. So miigwech for that. I am looking at the floor. I don't see anybody approaching the microphones, nobody online. So with that, I'm going to close the speakers list. Unless, mover, did you? No, okay, you're good? Okay. So we are calling for question, if we can, oh, sorry, I just been reminded, mover and seconder. One more thing, if you look at paragraph 10, we had that paragraph start with direct AFN 2. So scratch that as well. Okay, seconder? It's the same as the other paragraphs. Okay, we're good. Okay, so this resolution as amended. So, Encore, please open the electronic voting. Delegates, chiefs, proxy representatives, the voting is now open. You can use this morning's email or you can wait for another email, but it takes you to the same location. It is titled Emergency. You'll see it as ER2. ER2, and it has the title of the resolution. I see votes coming in, so that's good. We'll give it a minute here and just make sure that we have the votes coming in. Miigwech. So we will be moving along with the resolutions. I'm going to be handing it over to Cedric, but I think it's a basket of resolutions. Yeah. So we'll get into those resolutions following this. Miigwech minangayket kajaji bendamik. Wegayan chikade gadu chikade ka bin jeben ganong kanangayket. Yue kaya badak yue gaba bamo doyak. I'm just saying thank you for your support in this new process, modern process of voting, and it's actually become fairly quick. Once we've done it once for the morning, it becomes very efficient. So I see the numbers are coming in, and I'll give it another 20 seconds or so. 20 more seconds, and then we will close. reminder, we have a hard stop just after 4 o'clock. This room is needed, and hotel staff or convention center staff will be coming in and doing things in the room here. So we have a hard stop. We'd like to get to protocols, closing protocols before 4 o'clock so that we can do things in a good way, close the session in a good way, and then wrap up. So if we can have the voting closed, please. Close the voting. Thank you. And just waiting on numbers. Something that I do not have yet. I'll announce the numbers, and then I have another announcement about the previous resolution, which I didn't get the numbers for. Oh, you've got? Okay. So the resolution before you, there were 12 abstentions, 9 opposed, and 148 in favor. So the resolution carries. Thank you. Miigwech. I'll turn it over to Cedric.
I see that we have a chief at microphone 1.
Bonjour. Wajia. Chief Archie Wabas, Waterman Lake First Nation. About this resolution that was just passed, it didn't direct, like AFN has no business, right? Why are we bringing this in this forum when AFN is not being mandated on this resolution? We just wasted time here. There's other resolutions that direct AFN, mandating AFN. Maybe we need to look at our articles. All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chief. So just a few notes before we get into our next basket, which again will be on children and families. We've been asked by quite a few chiefs to restate the numbers for Resolution 41 that passed just before lunch. So again, we had a total of 230 votes, 10 abstentions, 146 for, and 74 opposed, which gave a percentage of 66 for. So that was how the resolution was carried. Also, just want to highlight again, room 202 for the lost and found. Before any of you head out, if you're missing a cell phone, a watch or something, that's where you can find it. And before we go to Chief King, I see you at the microphone. I also just want to take a moment to highlight someone who's been here for these past 3 days. Alanis Obamsawin, you are a pioneer, a legend, and I just want to take the time to say, raise you up and thank you for being here. Microphone 1, please.
Chief Wilfred King, Kiaslog, Nepinak, and I think that was my earlier point that I was trying to raise, and I'm glad that Chief Wabas has strengthened my point that I tried to raise earlier, and then we had someone that said, well, it's the chiefs that make that negotiation. So there's 633 chiefs, so who's going to follow through on that resolution?
Thank you, Chief King. So we will be heading now to our basket on children and families. This basket includes 4 resolutions. We have Draft Resolution 31, First Nations Indicators of Poverty and Wellness. Draft Resolution 32, Renewed Capacity Building Funding Commitment for an Act Respecting First Nations, Inuit, and Métis Children, Youth, and Families. Draft Resolution 33, entitled Extending the Age of Eligibility for Jordan's Principle from the Age of Majority to 30 Years of Age. And finally, Draft Resolution 34, Ensuring Transparency, Fair Representation, and Accountability in the Settlement Implementation Committee. Draft Resolution 33 is a revised edition. However, it was distributed yesterday, so we will not be going over all the changes. We will just limit it to the therefore be it resolved. If I can have Draft Resolution 31 on the screen, thank you very much. We will go through the therefore be it resolved that the First Nations and Assembly, 1, and I will also look to see for a mover and seconder. Thank you for that reminder, resolutions. Do we have Chief Derek Nepinak? Microphone 1, Chief Nepinak.
Miigwech, Mr. Chair.
excuse, I'm just making sure you're here. I'm gonna read through the therefore be it resolved, and I'll come back to you for comment. Sorry for that. And as a seconder, we had Chief Betsy Kennedy. Is Chief Kennedy here? Microphone 1.
Chief Kennedy's at a press conference. I'll fill in for her. Chief Angela Levasseur, Nisijawasa Cree Nation.
Thank you, Chief Levasseur. So we will be reading through the therefore be it resolved. For draft resolution 31, therefore be it resolved that the First Nations in Assembly, 1, endorse the First Nations indicators for poverty and wellness as determined by First Nations and as outlined in section whereas F of this resolution, in order to shift the understanding and measurement of First Nations poverty away from a narrow financial-based measure and towards a holistic and culturally appropriate approach. 2, call upon Canada to fund the Assembly of First Nations and its technical working group on social development to oversee a data collection pilot project to collect data on the indicators that do not have available data and sample the First Nations indicators of poverty and wellness in selected First Nations, including sustainable financial resources and capacity for the selected First Nations to participate with ease. 3, direct the AFN's technical working group on social development to identify willing First Nations within their respective regions to participate in the data collection pilot project. The selected First Nations must reflect diverse socio-economic realities and include northern and remote areas. And 4, direct the AFN to report back to First Nations in Assembly on the progress of the data collection pilot project by December 2025. If we can have draft resolution 32 put up on the screens and scroll down to the therefore be it resolved. So for draft resolution number 32, therefore be it resolved that the First Nations in Assembly call on the federal government to renew its commitment to provide capacity building funding to Indigenous nations over 5 years, beginning in the 25-26 fiscal year to support the implementation of the Act respecting First Nations, Inuit, and Métis children, youth, and families. 2, call on the Minister of Indigenous Services Canada, ISC, to commit to providing capacity building funding to Indigenous nations. And 3, direct the Assembly of First Nations, AFN, to advocate to the Minister of ISC to ensure that Canada commits to provide capacity building funding to Indigenous nations. If we can have revised draft resolution 33 on the screen. As well as scroll down to our therefore be it resolved. Thank you, technicians. So draft resolution 33. Therefore be it resolved that the First Nations in Assembly, 1, call on the Government of Canada to extend the age of eligibility for Jordan's Principle to the age of 30. 2, call on the Government of Canada to continue to uphold their commitment for Jordan's Principle and end discriminatory practices against First Nations children as they transition into adulthood. 3, call on the Government of Canada to provide long-term and sustainable funding for First Nations youth transitioning into young adulthood under Jordan's Principle, including funding for supports, navigation services within Indigenous Services Canada and First Nations, and capacity building for service coordinators. 4, call on the Government of Canada to perform social, health, and education programs for First Nation adults to ensure long-term and sustainable resources for all First Nations throughout their life cycle. 5, urgently call on the Government of Canada to ensure that the First Nations are reimbursed promptly and fully for all costs incurred in delivering Jordan's Principle services, particularly those incurred as a result of ISC Regional Office directives. 6, demand that the Government of Canada immediately revise its funding policies and processes under Jordan's Principle to prevent future funding shortfalls and delays, ensuring that First Nations receive adequate resources to meet the growing needs of children, youth, and families. And 7, call on the Government of Canada to establish transparent and timely communication mechanisms between ISC and First Nations, ensuring that critical information and decisions regarding Jordan's Principle are communicated directly, effectively, and without delay. And our final draft resolution in this basket, draft resolution 34, if we can scroll down to the bottom. Therefore, be resolved that the First Nations in Assembly, 1, call on the Settlement Implementation Committee, SIC, to establish an advisory subcommittee on compensation composed of diverse First Nations persons, including elders, women, youth, 2S LGBTQIA+ persons, and differently abled persons that are representative of Assembly of First Nations AFN regions and who have expertise in Jordan's principal administration, First Nations child, youth, and family-related services, or related health and wellness services. And the final, therefore, be resolved to direct the AFN Executive Committee to consider the principle of diversity, including elders, women, youth, 2S LGBTQIA+ persons, and persons with different abilities in future appointments of AFN SIC members. It is now the time for our mover to address the Assembly. So Chief Derek Nepinak, microphone 1, please.
Mr. Chair, Nibin Makwa, Ndijnakas Makwan Totem. I just wanted to start out by making a quick observation on the deliberations over the last few days and the great diversity of perspective that's brought to the floor from the different regions throughout our great land. And when I see conflict and difference of opinion, I reflect upon the contributions that our elders and our veterans have made to create a safe space for us to disagree. Because I've been to different places in the world in my life where you're not allowed to disagree. And when you disagree, you face serious reprisals from the state. And how fortunate we are to be in a place where we can disagree on many important things and still shake hands with one another and go back safely to our families. We owe that to our veterans and the teachings we've received from our elders in our lifetimes. If I'm standing here moving a resolution, it means I still believe in the process. And if I'm standing here moving a resolution or a package of resolutions, I take nothing away from those who originally designed them and crafted them for whatever their purpose may be. But I was sitting over there and I was asked to move this basket of resolutions, so I agreed to. And I agreed to because I am guided by those teachings that inform this assembly. And those teachings are represented in the ceremonies that happen each morning, from the people that lift the pipes, that sound the drum, that bring our medicines in, and they're represented by those staffs that we see up there. I still have respect for this process. That's why I'm here. So with that said, I'm moving the resolutions. I don't have a lot to add to them. We are involved in Minago-Zibi and Anishinaabe in the C-92 process. We are not writing a law. We're reclaiming law, remembering and reclaiming the law of family and children and families in our community. By reclaiming that law, it takes time, and it might not fit the government's agenda of 3 or 5 years of what they call capacity building. I believe the capacity has always been there in the communities. The capacity has always been there. It just needed room for voices to be heard. And those voices are being heard. And our mums and our grandmas and our great-grandmas who are stepping forward and saying something went wrong here in our community when it came to protecting children and families. Something went wrong, and it's now time to reclaim and speak of our law. That's what C-92 is about, and that's what rebuilding the foundation is about. It's going to take some more time. So that's why I believe the resolution asking for more resources in the communities, in whatever form they call it capacity building, it needs to happen, because some of us are just starting the process of remembering. And that means reinvigorating our language as well. For us, it's Anishinaabemowin, because all of the laws and the teachings are already in the language. And if you can understand the language, or even a bit of it, you start to get an indication of the great and beautiful history of our people and how we took care of one another. So with that said, I'm happy to be the mover of the resolutions, and hope that we have enough leadership here to get them across the finish line. Miigwech.
Thank you, Chief Nepinak. I will look towards our seconder. Did you wish to address the Assembly? You're okay? Perfect. So we'll go towards discussion. Again, no one on microphone 1. Microphone 2, please.
Marilyn Charlie Boy, proxy for Tidal Dell First Nation. I just have a question to clarify the indicators of wellness or indicators of poverty and wellness for First Nations children. What is there anything on what those indicators are, or has there been studies?
Perfect. And that is, as I understand, mentioned in therefore be it resolved 1, which does reference whereas F of the resolution. So whereas F mentions the 8 dimensions and the selected indicators of housing, education, food security, health, employment, income, early childhood, and culture, with explanations for each. They are available in the thing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Proxy. I will go towards our hybrid participants. I see we have Chief Span. If we could have it unmuted and put our screens, please.
Yeah, good afternoon. This is Chief Dakota Ben. I just want to ask a question in regards to draft resolution 34A. It states Article 12 of the revised FSA provides for a settlement implementation committee composed of 5 persons, 2 First Nation members, non-council members, selected through a solicitation of application process conducted by the AFN Executive Committee, and 3 council members, 1 of which is appointed by the AFN Executive Committee. So do these 5 representatives represent all 633 First Nations across Canada? And why is it only 5? These representatives should be picked by the regions or / provinces, the chiefs that consist of those provinces, and can that be amended? Coach Jam, thank you for giving me the time to speak.
Thank you, Chief Span. So what I understand is you are referencing draft resolution 34, whereas K. I would look towards maybe our mover if you had comments on that. Again, mentioning Article 12 of the revised FSA. Microphone 1, please.
Miigwech. Article 12 of the revised FSA is a court-approved document, and any revision to the FSA would likely require a court process or a request to the court made by order. And I would defer any further legal or technical questions to the AFN legal team to answer that. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Chief. So again, a question that refers to a specific article. Chief Spahan, I hope that's enough. We'll move on to microphone number 1, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Cheryl Casmer, Chief of ACM. I'm looking for a friendly amendment to resolution number 31 under the therefore be it resolved number 2. And I want to include the First Nations Information Governance Center. That center was developed by way of AFN resolution number 48 back in December of 2009. So it is a creation of us. And they're responsible for supporting First Nations in developing quality information that contributes to improving health and well-being of First Nations people in Canada. And they're also working on developing and supporting nations in achieving data sovereignty. And so I think that it's important that we include that group into this resolution. So this is what it would say. Number 2, call upon Canada to fund the Assembly of First Nations and its technical working group on social development to oversee a data collection pilot project in partnership with the First Nations Information Governance Center and emerging networks of regional information governance centers, and then carry on to collect data on the indicators and carry on from that to number 2.
Perfect. If you can just stay here at the microphone just to make sure that we have it right, and also if you can scroll down on the screen. Again, we're looking at draft resolution 31 for our technicians, with therefore be it resolved 2. I see you're working with our team. As it's being posted on the screen, and again, draft resolution 31, please. So again, we'd read a data collection pilot project in partnership with First Nations Information Governance Center and emerging networks of First Nations regional governance centers. Is that the language that you wish to propose?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. So I look towards our mover for the addition of, or the inclusion in partnership with First Nations Information Governance Center and emerging networks of First Nations regional governance centers, and therefore be it resolved 2 of draft resolution 31. I'm getting a thumbs up, and I look towards our seconder getting a thumbs up. Thank you very much. Now I'll be moving on to microphone 2, please.
Well, thank you. Chief Gould from the Abwood First Nation, the Mi'kmaq territory of Prince Edward Island. I think I'm going to ask for a point of order. I'm looking for a clarification on the acronym AFN, a legal interpretation based on the Charter. I'd like that to be presented to the chiefs in assembly. And the reason why I'm calling point of order, because each and every resolution that I've seen come before us as chiefs, we're asked to determine what the importance is or what the role of the Assembly of First Nation is. I believe that a special resolution has to be accepted by the executive first. Is that not correct? So it is past the first stage of criteria. Then we as chiefs, we push back on the terminology to exclude the same body that claims to represent us. How can we do both? I think the question was asked by 2 other chiefs previously, and there was no closure on that. How do we come before you now, and as a chief, I have to make decisions on my people and my community, but I don't understand if that acronym is correct. Will that acronym represent me, or do I have to find my own representation? I abstained from the previous resolution because I didn't have that answer yet, and I don't think a lot of chiefs in the room do either. If the Assembly of First Nations is not directed to represent me in this format as a lobbying agency which is governed by the Charter, who will? Who will represent me and my children in my community, a small Prince Edward Island, small First Nation, who doesn't have access to resources other than as an agency? It's easy for us to throw stones, but I live in a glass house. So I think it's very important this day forward there should be some clarity as to who and why we are here as chiefs in assembly, who represents us. And if it's not you, clearly define in your resolutions who will represent our people in that way. So I'll ask to be submitted in the record clarification on the acronym presented in all resolutions to define the role of the Assembly of First Nations. Allow.
Thank you, Chief Gould. So again, as we have been doing with point of orders, I will go see with my co-chairs, and we will come back with an answer. Perfect. Thank you for the wait. Again, I will go towards one answer that we agree upon as chairs. If further questioning is asked, then we could maybe refer ourselves to AFN Legal. In the way that we understand it, we're trying to distinguish the role of the AFN. Chief Gould, you're somewhere over there earlier. Chief Gould, we need to finish the first point of order. We'll come back after. Chief Gould. So am I understanding correctly, the point of order is to understand and better define the role of what is inclusive of the AFN? Can I have microphone 2, please?
I think it's already defined. It's just look in the book again. Under the charter, there's a definition of what the Assembly of First Nation is. It's a lobbying agency of, I'm not sure of the terminology, I think you guys can pull that pretty easily. So it's not a personal interpretation. It's a legal interpretation of what the Assembly of First Nation is. It's an acronym that we use in passing. AFN, what does it mean? It depends on the moment, depends on the resolution. If there's $1 billion attachment to it, it means this. Oh, no. If it's just this, it means that. No, it doesn't. According to the charter, it's a lobbying agency to represent all chiefs in assembly, governed by the chiefs in assembly. If the $50 billion settlement that table, the executive or the AFN negotiated, this assembly will turn it down, and we've done that. That's your job. When is it not your job? I have to read the resolution and determine if it's AFN or if it's somebody else, or the consensus of the room is that we have enough supports to do that. Why are we here? The core values of the Assembly of First Nation is to have something to represent as a collective. You are watering down your power to negotiate as people if we fight amongst ourselves. We go back now, we're going to talk about child and family, the negotiation process from 15 different sources. We've lost our negotiating power. We've gained our negotiating power by saying, no, that's not good enough for our children. But we have to unite around that. We can't define and split. They've done this to us for years, and I see that split. There has to be unification in our people, and it's in your charter. I'll challenge everybody in here. If that's not in the charter, then change it. Challenge the people. If you, hey, Chief, that right there, you're the one of the continuation. That's the question that's asked twice already, and nobody got an answer. So simply put, define it according to the charter, and the answer is in there.
Perfect. Thank you, Chief Gould, for that clarification. Again, I would refer you to Article 3, role and function of the Charter. So the role and function of the Assembly of First Nations is A, to be a national delegated forum for determining and harmonizing effective, collective, and cooperative measures on any subject matter which the First Nation delegate for review, study, response, or action. B, to be the national delegate forum of First Nations which, by virtue of their sovereignty, are the sole legitimate source for what it does or may become in the future. C, to be national delegated forum for the purpose of advancing the aspirations of First Nations and to remain subordinate in strength, power, and resources to the First Nations jurisdiction for which it is established to serve. D, to perform and adhere strictly as a sacred trust and duty to the nature, scope, and extent of the delegation granted from time to time by First Nations. And E, to seek, utilize, and distribute resources for the greater benefit of all First Nations in endeavors that are truly informed and substance national or international in nature and scope, and for which delegation has been granted by First Nations. So from the comments that I am understanding from you, these are defined and again recognize the power and sovereignty of individual nations.
Yes, that's exactly right. Thank you. And I think it's something that should be embedded before these discussions happen, before each and every resolution, when we start changing the charter. I sat on the Chiefs Committee on Charter Renewal. It's a long, arduous process which affects each and every one of us differently. But we can't come here collectively and throw it out when it's good for us and take it in when it's bad for us. We have to be unified on this. That's our power of negotiation, and that's who we should represent, all First Nations, all of our people.
Thank you, Chief Gould. So I'll see that point of order as being resolved. We'll now head to microphone number, just going to make sure no one's on Zoom. No, we're good. Microphone number 1, please.
Hello, Chief Archie Webas, Waterman Lake First Nation. These past 2 resolutions that were passed, number 02 and number 41, didn't mandate AFN, okay? It didn't mandate AFN. More specifically to 41, it's almost like a group can come here and pass a resolution. You know, as a chief, I was elected by the people of Waterman Lake to become a chief. And then I also appointed our regional non-grand chiefs appointed him to be the regional chief in our area. And then also, we appointed Ontario regional chief. We elected him to be in that office to represent my First Nation and my needs and priorities in the regional table with the government. Same thing with AFN National Chief. My former chief appointed or hired National Chief to be the advocate on behalf of national issues, national matters. Specifically to the resolutions, when we pass resolutions like this, we're just wasting time here. And also, where did the power and mandate? I never delegated anybody to pass these resolutions. You know, I'm the chief. I have a responsibility for my people too. And why did I, allow this to happen? It's almost like any organization can come here and pass these resolutions. I think we need to really consider, if you have a resolution on the floor directing, mandating AFN, those are the resolutions that are supposed to be entertained here. And put them on the floor, get them on debate, and vote on them. Here, these two resolutions doesn't mandate AFN. If you want a resolution in a national-wide that not involves AFN, do it somewhere else, not in this forum. Yeah.
Thank you, Chief Wallace. And again, these are comments on past resolutions. It was asked from us through a point of order to really remain on topic, so I will take that as a comment. That was said publicly on the record, but we will continue with comments, please, on basket, on children and families. So I'll look towards microphone number 2.
Sego Sogwegu, Cody Daibo for Mohawk Council of Ganawage. It's more of a comment in general just because I've been hearing all of the debates back and forth, and for everybody's awareness, Ganawage has not voted on any of these resolutions. This is not the body that represents Ganawage. I respect everybody that's in this room, but Ganawage is going to do what Ganawage has to do on their own. It just seems that we're very divided. I would almost suggest that maybe we table all these for another assembly and let people be able to go home and rethink about things. I think we're struggling amongst ourselves here to figure out how we want to interact in this forum. I'm getting increasingly concerned from Ganawage's end that decisions are being made that are going to impact Ganawage, but I have not been able to communicate with my community. I have not been able to get direction from my community. Yes, I am a chief, but I take direction from my people. I come here and I have not had proper time to update my people on these resolutions, on any of the information, but yet I have to make a decision, so I stay out of it, but things are going in a way that could affect my people at the end of the day. Even for Ganawage, we are part of the Iroquois Caucus, and we try to band together, but again, we don't speak on behalf of everybody's community and everybody's nation, so in Resolution 34, I'm concerned, that there's another committee that's established, and now we're asking for subcommittees, and we're asking for people to be represented on it, but there's only 5. There's how many people in this room? How can 5 people cover everybody's unique circumstances? And I think that goes down to earlier what was stated when Justin Trudeau was here, is that he has to come and meet with every individual nation, and not one body that's going to act as a representative body that did not get the consent of my people. So, and it's no offense to the AFN, I think it's great. We can come here and collaborate and work together on common issues, but I've been seeing increasingly this direction about wanting to negotiate on things and be part of negotiations when it should be us who are part of it. Anyways, I don't want to take up too much time, but it's been a long 3 days. We've been here a long time, so maybe it's time we take a break and come back at it in a few months while we had some time to think. Yeah.
Thank you, Grand Chief. I will move to microphone number 1, please. Again,
Chief Wilfred King, Nepinak, Gulby First Nation. I just want to draw the people's attention, and I think the question raised by Chief Gould is very important. And if you look at the charter itself, it's very clear in terms of what is the role of the AFN, what are the roles of the chiefs. I'm here on my own volition. I'm here because I believe in the association organization known as the AFN. And I agree that they don't speak on my rights in terms of treaties and inherent rights, but I also believe that we need a national lobbying body, and that is the AFN. If you look on the articles where we talked about in 1982 when the AFN was created in Penticton, BC, and again it was in 1985 the charter was agreed to in the city of Vancouver. You know, I'm here, like I said, as one of 633 First Nations. I don't have to be here. I could have stayed home. And I know some chiefs do that. They say, I know one very prominent chief that comes from a very lucrative community, says, I'm not going to any more AFN meetings because I think they're a waste of time and I can do better for my community working at home. I'm not going to mention his name because it's not warranted. But, you know, we have an option here, folks, in terms of working as a collective. And I talked about this at one point, that how we're governed, even the AFN, the National Indian Brotherhood, which is the corporate entity that we're known as, and each of our political organizations, whether it be the Chiefs of Ontario, is a corporate entity. And you can go right across the board, right across Canada. They're all corporate entities. And in fact, those corporate entities can be erased by the single signature of the minister. So that shows you in terms of where do you stand politically. We've seen what's happened to the APTN National Council, where you only have well, actually only one founding member that's part of the APTN National Council. It's basically dissolving itself within. And I'm a firm believer that we need a national advocacy body, you know. And for people to say, well, you know, I negotiate on my own behalf, and we heard that today about, well, I don't think the Prime Minister is going to come to Gulby and say, okay, Chief King, I want to negotiate with you directly, and what do you want, and maybe I'll give it to you. Let's be real here, folks, you know what I mean? There's 633 First Nations that the Minister of ISK has to deal with, let alone the Prime Minister. But I think it's important, and again, we need this national body. Like my community is not a very wealthy community. I come from a northern community, semi-remote, and I need the AFN for their lobbying. I need them for their expertise. You know, for us to say that we don't need the AFN, I think that's a bunch of baloney. Miigwech.
Thank you, Chief King. Again, we are on resolution basket on children and families. So again, if we can maintain discussion on that. And I will be closing the speakers list, seeing what time it is now. We have no one online, so let's go to microphone 2, please.
Yeah, sorry for the interruption. Since everybody's going off topic, I just wanted to mention the charter mentions the Confederacy of Nations as an organ. Why don't we activate that? We don't utilize that. When's the last time we utilized that? We can have little remedies when we argue about certain issues. This is basically a Chiefs Committee of, as I understand it, the Confederacy of Nations shall be composed of First Nation representative of each region on the basis of one representative for each region plus one representative for each 10,000 First Nation citizens of that region. This would bring more diverse representation from the regions to the table. People were talking about the charter, and I always wondered about that. How come we don't utilize this table? You know, it's an organ of the AFN. So if we're not going to use it, get rid of it. But I'm just frustrated when you talk about charter. Merci, Cho.
Thank you, Chief Jacko. Microphone number 1.
Thank you. Chief Lynn Akus from Zagame Nishnabek in Treaty Number 4. I want to acknowledge the prayers that were said on our behalf this morning and acknowledge the territory of the Anishinabek and the Algonquin. I just want to speak to Resolution 34 and why it's so important. I live in what's now Saskatchewan, and there's an attack on transgender youth, and there's an attack on two-spirited people in our province. My friend Terry grew up in foster care, and as a transgender woman, she could not be herself until she aged out. She had to hide who she was all her life. And so I think it's really important that, that this advisory committee is established. In terms of long-term reform, we need to ensure that two-spirited LGBTQ plus people are protected in all of our endeavors. So I wanted to say how important that is, especially for our communities. We don't want our children going to homes that won't honor who they are. I also want to say that I have issues with the AFN too, but as a chief, I get text messages, phone calls and emails about the issues that my people encounter dealing with the health system, with child welfare, with the justice system, with their livelihood and things like that. And so I take all of their issues and I synthesize them, and I look at the resolutions, and I try to analyze what kind of help, what kind of advocacy is there in that resolution package for my people. So I just wanted to say that, and I'm not trying to justify why I'm here, but I just want to say I'm here for my people, and that's my end objective always in coming here. So miigwech.
Thank you, Chief Eggers. And our final speaker changed, but we said one final. Microphone number 2, please.
Marilyn Charlie Boyd, Tidal First Nation proxy. I work as a wellness and prevention manager overseeing child and family services in my community. I also sit as an advisor on our negotiations team, negotiating for jurisdiction for child and family services for my nation. And this is a first to me, being at something like this. And my belief is that AFN just is an overseeing entity that helps back everything we do, from on the ground to some of the higher entities. And all this talk about charters and stuff is confusing, and once again takes away from the important issue of child and families. You know, our child and families have suffered long enough. It is time now that our children get what they deserve from everyone that's here and those not yet born. We shouldn't be arguing whether it should be here or not. We should be all in agreement that our children need better here and now, and that our families need better and need to reinsert their responsibility as parents in our communities so that we can move everything forward and prove once again that our way is the way.
Thank you, Proxy Charlie Boy. So again, the speaker list had been closed. So we'll call for question, and I'd ask for our technical team to open the vote, please, on basket, children and families, which includes draft resolutions 31, draft resolutions 32, draft resolution as revised 33, and draft resolution 34. So the voting is now open. You should be receiving your link, and our team will obviously be going around. If anyone needs support, raise your hand and we'll try to get those to you. We're getting the hang of this, as I see. Allow for maybe another 45 seconds just to give time. Again, this is Basket on Children and Families with draft resolution 31, 32, 33 as revised, and 34. Maybe another 15 seconds, unless I see panic in someone's eyes. Some of you, but not for the same reasons. So if I could ask for the polls to be closed, please. So for the results for Basket Children and Families, we have 16 abstentions, 7 opposed, and 134 in support. So the resolutions are carried. I see we have a speaker at microphone 1, please.
Hello, Chief Wilfred King, Kiasag in Nepinak. How many more resolutions do we have?
We have one other basket on, on environment. We have, after that, I believe 9 late resolutions and 3 on support.
Could I ask that, I know that we're supposed to, cut the meeting at 4 o'clock sharp, and the youth from our region asked that resolution 0924, late draft resolution, be entertained with the will of the Assembly.
There is an order of priorities for resolutions that...
I understand that, Mr. Chair, that there is a priority, but I think the youth are our priority as well. And again, I don't want to make this an issue, but we've seen resolutions. I just hate like hell we're going to lose quorum here, and we only have an hour left, and I think this resolution is just as important as other resolutions, and it speaks to the heart of the AFN, Miigwech.
Thank you, Chief King. We will discuss with the Resolutions Committee and our co-chairs, and we'll see. So again, according to rules and procedures, late resolutions cannot pass before those that were on time, so we will have to continue with the regular thing. I do offer my support, though, to the National Youth Council as a former member, and obviously we'll be there next time in July to continue this work. So for now, I will pass on. Microphone 1, please.
Chief Wilfred King, Kiasag in Nepinak. Thank you for following the rules.
After 3 days, they were going to get it. So I'll now move it over to our co-chair, Véronique.
Okay, we're now ready for the basket on environment and conservation. We have 4 draft resolutions in this basket, and our movers and seconder for this basket. Mover is Chief Terry Richardson, and seconder is Chief Dan Manuel. If you want to approach the microphones, I will first read the therefore be it resolved, and then you can speak to the draft resolutions.
Do you want to confirm they're in the room? Chief Terry.
So I see Chief Terry over here, and do I have the seconder close by as well? Yes, no?
Chief Dan Manuel.
Chief Dan Manuel. Microphone number 2, please.
White, proxy Mike Labordi for Chiacton. I'll second that.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have a new seconder. I will now read the draft resolutions. We can put on draft resolution number 1 on screen. The title first. Thank you. Draft resolution number 1, 2024, entitled First Nations Leadership in Impact Assessment. We can scroll down to the therefore be it resolved that the Assembly in the First Nations in Assembly urge the Government of Canada to implement the changes proposed by First Nations in their calls for improvement to the physical activities regulation project list in order to ensure that projects that may impact First Nations right, title, and jurisdictions, including but not limited to in situ oil sands projects, nuclear projects, and small nuclear reactors, remain subject to federal impact assessment under the Impact Assessment Act. 2, call on the Government of Canada to, in partnership with First Nations, amend the IAA to bring it in line with the minimum standard articulated in the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. For clarity, any amendments to the IAA must include and uphold the free, prior, and informed consent of the Dene Nation and Yukon First Nations on any project occurring in provinces that have transboundary impact on those respective nations. 3, call on the Government of Canada to implement in the implementation of the IAA to A, uphold its commitment under the UN Declaration. B, utilize joint development processes to strengthen consultation and collaboration with First Nations for any future regulatory or policy development under the IAA. C, ensure that any future amendments, regulations, or policies maintain or enhance the existing protections and opportunities for First Nations in federal impact assessment. D, promptly adopt Indigenous co-administration agreement regulations to enable the negotiation of co-administration agreements with those First Nations who wish to pursue them. E, prioritize capacity support for First Nations and allocate a specific funding envelope to support First Nation-led impact assessments. F, recognize, respect, implement, and enforce First Nation-led impact assessments where First Nations have taken self-determined action to develop and apply their own process. G, ensure that the requirement to conduct a federal impact assessment is maintained for all major projects that have the potential to impact the rights and interests of First Nations, including those projects that are deemed to be clean or green or necessary for the transition to net zero energy. H, ensure the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada continues to access a role in assessing nuclear projects, and I, provide adequate funding directly to First Nations to support their full, direct, and unfettered participation in joint regulatory and policy drafting processes under the IAA. 4, call on the Government of Canada to consult the Dene of the Northwest Territories in regards to all projects upstream of Denende. 5, call on the Assembly of First Nations to A, share information and facilitate dialogue with First Nations to support joint development of regulations and policies related to federal impact assessment. B, convene a community of practice with First Nations leaders, technicians, representatives, academics, and practitioners with experience in First Nation-led impact assessments to share experiences and lessons in First Nation-led impact assessment. C, develop a toolkit to support First Nations in their work to adopt their own impact assessment procedures, processes, and requirements while building on existing First Nations-led toolkits, and the advocate for the maintenance as a baseline of the protections and opportunities for collaboration afforded to First Nations in the current version of the IAA, and amendment that any changes in law, policy, or regulation are as strong or stronger than the current protections for the rights and interests of First Nations. So we can now put draft resolution number 2, 2024 at the title first, so entitled Support for Enoch Cree Nation within Treaty 6 Territory Legal Action Against the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act. And therefore be it resolved that the First Nations in Assembly, we can scroll down to the therefore be it resolved. It will give me the time to take a sip of water. The previous one was quite long. So, therefore be it resolved that the First Nations in Assembly, 1, support the Enoch Cree Nation and other interested nations in initiating litigation against the Government of Canada in respect of the imposition of the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act and the federal carbon pricing system, the carbon tax, on First Nations and their citizens. 2, direct the Assembly of First Nations to provide the necessary political support to the ECN, as well as the Chiefs of Ontario and Attawapiskat First Nation for their proposed ongoing litigation. 3, call on the ECN and the Indian Resource Council to provide regular updates on this litigation to the First Nations in Assembly. We can now put draft resolution number 3, 2024, advancing First Nations-led marine conservation and Indigenous protected and conserved areas. And we can scroll down to the therefore be it resolved. Therefore be it resolved that the First Nations in Assembly direct the Assembly of First Nations to continue to collaborate with the Canadian Department of Fisheries and Oceans to ensure that the 21 recommendations listed in Marine Indigenous Protected and Conserved Areas, opportunities and recommendations for realizing Canada's commitments to reconciliation in marine conservation, the 2023 Marine IPCA report, are fully implemented. to urge the DFO to fully implement the 21 recommendations from the 2023 Marine IPCA report with predictable and flexible funding to empower First Nations in advisory, co-management, and decision-making processes related to fisheries, aquatic resources, and ocean management, and to advance these protected areas through meaningful consultation, collaboration, and partnerships with First Nations in support of Canada's commitments to reconciliation and marine conservation. 3, call on the DFO to create a cross-departmental leadership committee, including representatives from the AFN and DFO fisheries, management and marine conservation operations, science and policy to support the implementation of the 2023 Marine IPCA report recommendations and the United Nations Declarations on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act action plan measures for which DFO is responsible, and ensure that First Nations perspectives actively inform marine conservation programs, policies, and legislations. 4, direct the AFN to develop capacity building tools related to First Nations-led conservation that are reflective of the diversity of First Nations from coast to coast to coast, with the guidance of the Chiefs Advisory Committee on Climate Action and the Environment and other technical bodies as required. And the last resolution of this basket is draft resolution number 4, 2024, reaffirming support for the Joint Committee on Climate Action. And we can scroll down on the therefore be it resolved. Therefore, be it resolved that the First Nations in Assembly call on the Prime Minister and National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations to consider the recommendations in the annual reports of the Joint Committee on Climate Action as the basis for joint AFN Canada climate action with proposed biennial meetings to review progress. 2, direct the AFN to ensure discussions at the JCCA reflect the priorities set out in the AFN National Climate Strategy, as well as those identified by First Nations by way of resolution. 3, call on the Government of Canada to commit to fully implementing and funding the recommendations identified within the First Nations Climate Leadership Agenda, including regional specific recommendations. 4, call on the Government of Canada to ensure that discussions from the JCCA, as well as from First Nations rights and title holders, are mainstreamed across all federal departments working on climate change-related work, including the development of new policy and regulatory guidance. 5, direct the JCCA to work with First Nations rights and title holders to break down the silos in relevant federal department and to take a whole of government approach to implement the recommendations outlined in the FNCLA in its federal climate policy. So that's our basket of 4 draft resolutions. I will now ask for the mover and seconder to approach the mics if they want to speak on these baskets. Can we open microphone number 1, please?
Madam Chair. Thank you so much. My name is Chief Terry Richardson from Pabineau First Nation. It's an honor to provide opening remarks on this basket of environmental issues. This basket contains resolutions addressing a number of critical issues supporting First Nations as rightful leaders in impact assessment, marine conservation, and climate action. I had a bunch of other notes, but I'm going to do as one elder told me in my community: always speak from the heart, and it doesn't take many words to tell the truth. The reality is we're facing a big, very serious situation with climate change in our communities. On the East Coast, we see it on the West Coast and throughout Canada. You know, I've seen people here talk about our youth. We're not giving them very much of a planet if we don't start taking care of it. And it's very important that we start actioning ourselves and taking our rightful place as stewards of Mother Earth. We're not doing that. So as leaders, we have a responsibility to do that for our youth. Otherwise, we're not giving them a planet. You can't eat money, people. And you know, I know the economy is an important thing, but we have to maintain that balance. And right now, there's a big concern with the climate and what's happening in the climate. So it's very important. We've all seen that. First Nations have remained diligent, resilient, and respectful caretakers of our lands, waters, and ice. We continue to lead by example. These resolutions and issues contained within are important illustrations of our leadership as First Nations. With this, I humbly ask you, chiefs and proxies, to support the environmental resolution basket. I'd also like to take this time to thank the Advisory Committee on Climate Action and Environment, the ACE Committee, who work hard and diligently behind the scenes to make sure that our climate is taken care of and address our First Nation issues. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chief. Does our seconder want to talk on the basket? No, you're not. Do we have the seconder close by?
He's in the brown cowboy hat. I don't think he, well.
Okay, we can now open the discussion on this basket. Does anyone have comments, amendments to propose? Yes, perfect. There is one on, I will start on microphone number 1, yes?
Yes, John Jack, Chief Councillor for the Hawaiian First Nations. My First Nation has been severely detrimentally affected by the flooding that happened at atmospheric rivers in British Columbia, and I attribute this, and I think we attribute this, to climate change. So I want to echo the movers' concern around climate change and the importance there. When I look at the basket of resolutions, one of them doesn't seem to fit, and that's the one on carbon tax. So I'd like to maybe pull that one out for a separate conversation, because I support all of the other resolutions wholeheartedly, but carbon tax, there needs to be something to limit people's emissions of carbon tax. And if we're going to have an opinion on that, we should have had a longer conversation about it. So I just don't know why this was put together, because it's not about the environment, it's just about money. So yeah, that's what I would like to do. I don't know if we can do that, though.
Thank you for your proposition. I will consult the resolution committee as well as my co-chair to see if we can remove one of the resolution. 1 second. Okay, so I will turn to our mover and seconder to ask if you agree to remove the draft resolution on the carbon tax from the basket, so that we vote on only the 3 other draft resolutions. So, yes. Can we open microphone number 2? No? Okay.
I want to speak to the carbon tax.
He wants to speak to the carbon tax side. Just clarification what you're asking. Are you asking the mover or
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I guess from our perspective, because initially I was supposed to be the seconder to this resolution and find out there was another seconder, which I totally respect and appreciate very much. For us, one can say it's about money, but we're treaty. And we were afforded in our treaty not to pay tax. So first and foremost, this is what we want to defend. This is what we want to stand up and make sure that the exemptions that Canada gives Quebec, and in the acknowledgement and how Quebec is different from the rest of Canada, is how we should be treated as Treaty First Nations as well, and as Indigenous peoples here. It's not a one-size-fits-all that when Canada decided that everybody's going to be subjected to the carbon tax, that Indigenous peoples as well were dragged into that without consultation, without that discussion. To me, the issue of money doesn't even weigh into this, because I would defend treaty over money any day. And so this is why I stand here today and say that it is part of the environment. And we have people that are up north in our northern isolated communities that are disproportionate in regards to being affected more severely than we are. But why are we paying tax when we are tax exempt? Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. So if we, just to clarify, if the chiefs decide to remove the draft resolution from the basket, we can still address it right after this basket. So we will still vote on that resolution, that's for sure. So I will now turn to the mover and seconder to ask if they agree to remove the draft resolution on carbon tax from this basket. Yes or no? Our mover. Microphone, okay, I will give you a second to discuss about this. Okay. I recognize that you want to speak on microphone number 2, but we will address this before, and then we'll get to you. Yes, microphone number 1.
Yeah, we're looking at possibly pulling that particular resolution out and voting on it separately outside the basket, if that's possible, Madam Chair.
Yes, so we have the mover and seconder that agree with that. Yeah, and our seconder, do you agree to remove the draft resolution on the carbon tax from this basket? Yes? Okay, thank you. So we will address this draft resolution after the basket. So we now have 3 draft resolution on this basket. We will continue the discussion, and I will go to microphone number 2.
Judy Wilson, proxy holder for Chief Barb Code, Shuswap Indian Band. I just wanted to talk to draft 01, just on the impact assessments. I just wanted to ensure our recognition and implementation of our free prior informed consent is on there, and also the recognition of inherent title and rights and treaty rights. And also that, because what the process does, like many of the government-led processes, it'll rely on strength of claim, and it'll rely on, enforcing that, like, if there's, say, a mine, and it'll just go to the communities that are maybe adjacent to the mine, but what about the communities upstream? What about the communities downstream from that mine? So I just wanted to ensure the wording is in there about the free prior informed consent, and also in the acknowledgement of inherent title rights and treaty rights, because some of the nations have their own laws and policies on this that dictate how any major developments or companies would engage them and uphold their inherent title and treaty rights in that case, because right now we went through a lot of processes with these different mechanisms that Canada has and the province, and they don't fare out very well for us. But I am in favor of the environment and climate change resolutions, but that one just stood out that we needed to have some safeguards around it. So if Curtis could assure us, it's right there, he scares me all the time by doing that. If he can assure that's there, I'll go off now and see if he can make sure it's there.
So you have an amendment to propose on draft resolution number 1, is that correct? Yes, perfect. So we'll be working on that, and then we'll take a comment on number 1. Yeah.
I would like to propose an amendment to section 4, section 1. Draft resolution number 1.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just sorry for clarification. We are talking about the kids and the one yet to come. We did have a late resolution, so it should be added in this package. We only have limited time, but I'll just get Layman to speak, then I'll speak to it after.
I understand. Unfortunately, we cannot address...
But we still have 4 minutes to talk, and we should address this. This is very serious.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Chief Gary Layman, Beaver Lake Cree Nation, Treaty 6 territory. I would like to propose an amendment to section 4 of the therefore be it resolved. I did submit a late resolution to our team. They have been working hard to submit the documents. The resolution refers to in time for the Assembly. But an amendment to this resolution would suffice. On Monday, the nations belonging to tribal chiefs, who are a subset of nations from Treaty 6, formally submitted a request to the Federal Minister of Environment to designate the Pathways Carbon Sequestration Project as a project that would be subject to an environmental assessment under Canada's Impact Assessment Act. Onion Lake is working with us as well. We have requested the designation because the reviews and regulations under Alberta's legislation do not address treaty rights or cumulative effects. This proponent of this project, 6 energy companies who collectively made large annual profits in the history of profits, have been submitting their applications for this project in many parts. Each 15-kilometer of pipeline is being submitted as a different project. There will be over 400 applications, and we will have to try to respond to each one. A carbon capture project of this scale and size has never been tried anywhere else in the world. The project has 3 parts: capture, transport, and storage. On the capture part of the project, the Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis have said last spring that the CCS installation at Sask Power's Boundary Dam 3 coal plant an unperforming failure, and it only achieved 57% capture rate after 9 years in operation and $1 billion spent on the technology. They promised 95% capture. The analysis said Canada should not be proud of the money and resources wasted on CCS and should be especially concerned about the billions of dollars now earmarked for additional CCS investments.
10 seconds, Chief.
Okay. Minister Wilkinson has made public comments saying that Canada may contribute billions in funding to the Pathways project. Canada should not make any financial promises to Pathways until impacted First Nations have a seat at the table in those economic discussions. As of Tuesday, the federal government has formally received our request. we now have 20 days to get support letters to them. My amendment would be to number 4, new section E.
Okay, thank you. So the resolution team will be working on that. Can you talk with perfect. I see that you're doing that. Now I will come back on the comment. No, I will address the amendments first. So we had an amendment that was proposed, so we will read it into the record and see if our mover and seconder agree. So we can look at draft resolution number 1 and go to the therefore be it resolved 1. Okay. So we added First Nations inherent rights, and that's it. Mover and seconder, do you agree with this? Yes. Seconder here, yes. Perfect, thank you. I heard your comment on the draft resolution, on the late resolution that you submitted on environment as well. Unfortunately, the rules are very, very clear. We cannot address a late resolution before the on-time resolutions. Can you open microphone number 2?
I would like to support the amendments brought by Chief Layman. This is Chief Kelsey Jacko, Cold Lake First Nations. This is really going to impact my kids for the future. This project is the first of its kind. A CCS project of this scale and complexity has not been implemented anywhere in the world. The carbon will be pumped underground into the storage hub, space under the ground. The TCVI and Onion Lake First Nations reserve lands are within or right next to the storage hub, meaning we will be impacted. The storage hub is also inside the traditional homelands of our people, where we exercise our treaty and Indigenous rights. The project is huge. It includes over 400 kilometers of gathering and transmission CO2 pipelines, which will be the largest network in Canada. The formation there are storing in it and also huge. It covers nearly a sixth of Alberta. If something goes wrong, it will go very, very wrong. We have tried to work with Alberta on this project since we first learned of it. We have been writing to Alberta to have an open discussion about how best to fully assess the impacts of the project. However, Alberta does not want to talk to us. For example, we met with the Minister of Indigenous Relations, Environment and Protected Areas and Energy in June 2024. And they committed to holding further meetings with us to explore how to ensure the risk of pathways projects can be fully investigated and understood. But that has not happened. They have continued to meet with the Pathways Consortium. Since June 2024, we have in fact heard nothing further from the Government of Alberta or the AER on this issue. Instead of working with our nations to assess this project in a transparent way, last week the Government of Alberta stated a new lawsuit challenging the validity of the Federal Impact Assessment. The Federal Impact Assessment has a role. It is to be used when a project impacts lands in a federal jurisdiction or when the impacts of a project could impact multiple provinces. The formation that wants to store the carbon in goes under Saskatchewan. At our last meeting, Pathways told us not to worry, that if the CO2 moved that far, they could just put a wall underground, which doesn't make sense. Someone needs to explain to me how that could be possible when they can't even give us a formation map. The fact is, First Nations in Alberta need the Impact Assessment Act if we are to have any hope of real assessment of this project. It is an incredibly tough process. It will take into consideration not only the economics, but the people, the animals, even the bugs. Like my colleague said, we aren't necessarily against the project, but as knowledge keeper Barney Baptiste said at the start of the assembly, if we are going to build it, we have to make sure to build it right, because we are going to have to live in it. And Alberta, you don't own the pore space under my reserve. That's an infringement of my people. You know, I'm scared. I want my land, my lake to be pristine. And I'm hoping to keep it that way. No, and if I have to protest, I will. How do you get our story heard? We need a seat at the table. You know, Premier, Cherokee Princess, straighten out. Masi Cho.
Thank you. I will read the amendment on draft resolution number 1 on the therefore be it resolved 2, including free, prior, and informed consent. For clarity, any amendments to the IAA must include and uphold the free, prior, and informed consent of the Dene Nation and Yukon First Nations on any projects occurring in provinces that have boundary impact on those respective nations. So that's now the end of the point number 2. Do we have the, mover, you agree? Seconder over there, you agree as well? Thank you. I will now take a comment here from Chief Spahan online. Chief
Yeah,
Spahan?
thank you, Lisa Behan, Chief of the Quarter Indian Band in the Cup Nation here in the interior of British Columbia. I just want to go to draft resolution number 3. And I know we talk about amendments in the therefores, but I'm looking at the whereases in H. It states First Nations need adequate support. It should read not need, but demand adequate support. In regards to the therefore, number 3, it states call on DFO to create a cross-departmental leadership committee. I looked through this resolution and I didn't see anything that clarifies what that committee looks like or how we would be included in this. Just a question to the mover and seconder. Can that be defined in this resolution or no? Those are my questions. Thank you for giving me the time to ask them.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, so we have one of the amendments. We are on draft resolution number 3, and we will move up to the point H on the whereas. Can we scroll up a little bit to H? Thank you. So First Nations demand. Mover, do you agree with that new wording? Yes. Seconder, you agree? Perfect. We will come back for the other amendments. The Chief did have some questions for the mover. I will let you answer to that. Can we open microphone number 1?
Yes, Madam Chair. To the Chief online, it would be actual decision makers at the table and not people unable to make those decisions within DFO.
Thank you. Can we go on draft resolution number 1? We have an amendment that's ready to read. And also, I will close the speakers list very soon. So if you want to speak on this issue, you can approach the mic. So it's draft resolution here. Can we move down a little bit, scroll down a little bit?
E, final one.
So it's the final one, E. issue a letter of support in regards to Treaty 6 First Nations request to add carbon capture and storage projects, specifically the Pathways project, to the list of designated projects requiring a federal impact assessment by December 2024. We have our mover here that agrees and our seconder that agrees as well. Thank you. I now close the speakers list. Did you have any other comment on microphone 1? No? Perfect. We can now call question on this basket. A quick reminder, we have draft resolution 1, 2, and 4. We have removed draft resolution number 3. Is that it? No, number 2? Sorry for this. No, it's draft resolution 1, 3, and 4. We have removed draft resolution number 2. So can we open the polls for the basket on environment and conservation with draft resolution 1, 3, and 4? The polls are open. You can vote on this basket. We will close the poll in about 30 seconds. Is it on the voting? Microphone number 2, please.
Thank you. Chief Musquesh from the Pace Plat First Nation. Finally figured out this voting thing. And I'm just wondering, for this last vote, do we still have quorum?
Yes, we do. We have more votes than the quorum that are in at the moment. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying. Okay, I see some votes that are going in. Okay, I still see some votes coming in, so we'll give another 30 seconds. We can close the polls. So the result, we have 1 opposed, 4 abstain, and 128 in support. So the basket is carried. Thank you. Cedric will take on for the rest. Thank you, Chiefs.
Thank you, Veronique. And I haven't had the chance to say it on the mic, but really, very well done. You're a great coach to have. So, we have a few minutes left before going towards our closing. I just want to remind you about process behind the resolutions process. So again, if ever we don't have the time to address on the floor resolutions, they will be referred to the executive. I also want to mention that the late resolutions that were mentioned are available online and also at distribution if ever you want a copy, just to be aware of what the subjects were. And finally, just for a quick message, I'd like to turn it over to our portfolio holder for environment, water stewardship, and climate change, Regional Chief Adamek.
Gynach Chish, Algonquin Kwan, Kluani, Yohat Duasaug, Dachlawedi Ayahat, Luan Mankai Iche, Gynach Chish. My name is Kluani Adamek, and I come from the Killer Whale people. I am the current portfolio holder for environment, climate change, and water stewardship. And I want to acknowledge, first of all, the Advisory Committee on Climate Action and the Environment. This committee is AFN's committee that includes leadership, our chiefs, knowledge keepers, women and youth, to ensure that we are supported by our technicians and experts to being the best advice with respect to how to deal with climate change. I come from a territory, Kluani First Nation, very Googleable. Kluani Lake has gone down by 10 feet in the last 10 years. And this is just one example of the impacts of climate change across this country and around the world. And the resolutions that were just carried provide very important direction to this national committee. And there's another part of the work that I think really does require leaning in as First Nations people. I respect and understand that the carbon tax is something that has perpetuated issues related to governments making unilateral decisions. That is true. What is also true is we have a serious problem with respect to global warming. We have a people problem around the world, and the GHG emissions are not going down, they are going up. In Ottawa, look outside. I got here and thought, oh gee, it's so warm, I don't even have to bring my winter coat. And then I thought, that's a problem. I'm not used to this. And so, chiefs, this is an opportunity for First Nations to come up with what a price on pollution looks like from a rights holder's perspective. Because the companies that are releasing the emissions are not being held accountable. We have unique taxation interests in our communities, and I don't disagree with those that say the carbon tax is just not right. It's not there. We haven't got it right. But my question would then be to the chiefs, what can we do to support you to get something out there where we know that there is a price on pollution? And I think that could be an incredibly compelling plan leading into this next federal election, where we're seeing one political party saying, axe the tax. Again, that's not my place to disagree with. However, what are our solutions when it comes to putting a price on pollution? We have them. We just need to be supported to do. And so that was a reflection that I wanted to share with respect to the Chiefs in Assembly, the work of the Climate Committee, and ensuring that we're supporting you from behind and from beside. And I'm so proud of the committee for leading in that way. The other reflection I wanted to share is with respect to Yukon First Nations. We're one of the regions, as Dena'Day, Northwest Territories, most impacted by climate change. When you're looking to know a status of a people's, how are they doing, where are they at, you look to the women and the children. And as we know, we heard from speakers this morning with respect to missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, our children being taken away. Our chiefs had an interesting discussion in our caucus room that also is important for you to reflect on, chiefs. The decorum of these assemblies is important. And for, as a mother of an 18-month-old, a staff who has an 8-month-old, having to leave is unacceptable. And so, we have a code of conduct that is applied to everybody here. But I should not have to leave this room with my daughter because it's not safe. And so that is our challenge moving forward. How do we ensure that this is a place where we feel comfortable to bring our kids? Because we're sure talking about them a lot. But we have to be able to act on our words and lead with integrity. And so I leave that with you. Certainly did not think the feelings would come out in this way, but as a mother, as a daughter, as a granddaughter, and as an auntie, it was an important reflection that I needed to share, and an important reflection shared by my chiefs. So with that, I say Gynach Chish, thank you for the support on those resolutions, and look forward to ending our assembly in a good way. Thank you.
So thank you, Regional Chief Adamek, for those words. And again, as mentioned, we had a pretty solid stop time that was mentioned for the past 3 days, so I will be not going to the microphones. I just want to take the time, though, to recognize the different councils that are here, our knowledge keepers who stood with us during this assembly. We had specified that we had a 4 o'clock talk time, so I will continue. I have not addressed you. We will not be opening the microphones. And was withdrawn. No, we have informed you.
$2,500 to come here and $450 to be part of this assembly to experience a game that just went on here where our resolution was taken out to be addressed, which is on the order of the day, which is on the table, which has then been just axed and been part of an executive discussion. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's fair, and I don't think that's process.
Yeah,
I don't know where the Assembly has the authority to do that. When the order of the day is there, whether it's a hard stop, I've witnessed throughout the whole day where there has been concessions made, and you and the other MC have stated that if there's more time that's needed, then you need to come forward with a motion. There were 3 occasions where nobody has come forward with a motion to extend the time, where you guys took the prerogative to extend the time. We have serious issues what we want to address here too. And you guys are trivializing that by eliminating a resolution from a basket and then just canceling it. You tell me how that's fair.
So you have been heard. Again, the rules are clear on this.
It's not going to be voted on.
They can be deferred to a next assembly. I understand that is the process. When something is withdrawn from the basket, it is it is added after. And in this situation, we had been very clear for the past 3 days. So again, we do have to move on to our closing. I'm sorry, I understand the situation and the emotions, but this is the process that we have. I understand that.
And I can't believe that the national chief is not interjecting and making sure justice prevails here.
Thank you.
The same way she walked off the stage when the Prime Minister walked off.
Thank you. So I want to take the time to go towards our closing now and recognize again our knowledge keepers that still sit here next to us and again bring us that energy and that stability. So I want to thank you, Chuck and Gwen. I want to thank our two-spirit, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, intersex, asexual, plus council who is here representing all of our brothers, our sisters, and our cousins. I want to thank our veterans for being here, for creating that safe space. Our youth, you guys have power, you guys are amazing, and I really am excited to see where you're going and hoping to see you up here in 37 to 39 years. Our women who are here to support those who need and give life. And finally, also our accessibility team who is here helping us with translation, both audio and here with our sign language. I want to recognize them. I want to recognize all the chiefs that are still here, still participating. Again, we had a few little things that we had to get through, growing pains as we called them this assembly, but I want to recognize all the work that you guys do, the staff that is with you, and as well as the proxy representatives. And finally, I want to thank our technicians, the AFN team, work countless hours, go to bed very late every single night to be able to bring this assembly alive and make it represent your voices. I want to recognize all of those around. And finally, I would look towards our national chief to start us off on our closing ceremony.
Thank you. I just have to say this, though. I agree with my colleague Kluani that we have to have safe spaces. I also have to remind the chiefs that in assembly, this is your assembly. This is not my assembly. This is not the staff's assembly. This is your assembly, and I know you can argue with the chairs, and I know that that happens often. You need to be reminded too at times, but I want to leave that and respect the assembly between the chiefs and the chairs. And I'm trying to be respectful as well, and I'll always try my best to be, and if I'm not, then I welcome correction on that. But I just want to say that as we're closing off. I know that it's always tough to deliberate, and there's never enough time, and we only get 3 days in December, and we get 3 days in July, and sometimes, you know, this year, thankfully, this is the 4th from last year to this year, and I just want to say that I respect each and every one of you. I want to thank you all. We acknowledge that we are gathered here on the ancestral unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation. We want to again thank and acknowledge Chief Greg Sarazin of the Algonquins of Pikwaktagan and Chief Jean-Guy Waitek of Kitigan-Zibi and Anishinaabe for welcoming us on their lands. I also want to lift up, of course, the Ontario Regional Chief Benedict for your ongoing leadership and welcoming us to your beautiful territory. I want to acknowledge and hold up the host drum, Spirit Wolf singers, and thank the Algonquin Elder, Jane Chartrand, for opening this assembly, as well as the Eagle staffs and all the ceremonial items. I also want to thank 2-year-old Renea Monias. Thank you, Chief Monias, that beautiful little girl who walked us into this assembly on Tuesday, and she let us in here. And I think that's why we're all here today. I also want to thank the chiefs, council members, elders, proxies, the media, and others, and all the participants in the Circle of Trade. Sold out again, and it just shows that people want to speak to First Nations. We want to thank all of those that have been streaming with us and discussing and participating. Your voices are being heard, and we appreciate your interest. I also want to thank our co-chairs and the AFN staff for your amazing work in putting all of this together for us year after year. We also want to thank special guests for attending and participating in these sessions. Paul Brandt, we greatly appreciate your voice and for being here as an ally to help us, a champion in the fight against human trafficking. We look forward to continuing our discussions and our collaborations. We also want to thank the Prime Minister, his ministers, the opposition leaders that attended today. We appreciate you being present and hearing our voices and deliberating with us. I also want to thank all of the chiefs, the proxies, and the leaders of this country on the assembly floor. This is what we are here for, and I want to lift you all up in a good way. In particular, I also want to thank the mothers for speaking out for their children, the grandmothers. And we lift up all the mothers and relatives grieving across this beautiful country from First Nations and for First Nations that were killed in police custody. We are with you. This week, our chiefs in this assembly were united. It is time for a full national inquiry to the actions of colonial police forces in this country. And I think that we have to follow the will of those mothers. But an inquiry cannot be used as an excuse an excuse for any government to not do anything. In July, the public safety minister came to the assembly and he said that he had a mandate to quickly introduce federal legislation. He said that legislation would recognize First Nations policing as an essential service and include long-term, stable, and recurring funding. 5 months later, we have nothing but grieving families and unsafe communities. How much is too much? What is the numbers of in-custody deaths needed for Canada to act? Thank you. If 13 deaths is not enough in 2 months, then what is? And it's not just grieving families calling for change. The Supreme Court of Canada is telling the provinces and the federal government that it is no longer okay to underfund your First Nations policing in this country. They cannot do that to you, and we need to hold them to account. So to the federal government, we say that you have to do more than just show up. You can't keep saying you feel a sense of urgency and then keep denying action. In 2025, 10 years after the release of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action, we have an opportunity to hold leaders accountable for what they have done or not done. In my opening address, I was honored to speak of Justice Murray Sinclair. I asked if he was here, and I believe he was here with us this week, that he might ask, have we been good in life? Have we been good relatives? Have we done what was needed? And this week, chiefs, at this assembly, we did what was needed. I believe with our work this week and our unity that we have been good relatives to the next generation. We want to thank all of you for that. And to my colleagues on the executive, Chimigwech, for your hard work and your leadership. United, we are being good relatives to the next generation. We have seen it on the water legislation coming to the House of Commons this week. And I know earlier today we had met with senators, certainly that will be leading the file, Senator Paul Prosper, that wants to, take that into the Senate. And we reminded them that clean water is something that is sacred to our people. It is not merely a resource or a commodity to be traded or consumed. It is a gift from the Creator flowing through the veins of this land, connecting all living beings. Water sustains not just our bodies, but our spirits, our traditions, and our way of life. For generations, we have cared for rivers, lakes, and streams, knowing that water is a reflection of the health of our communities and the land that we share. Our assembly is united in the belief that water is a fundamental human right. This is why Bill C-61 is an important first step towards ensuring safe and clean drinking water for First Nations across this country. While the House of Commons adopted many of our proposed amendments, the AFN will continue to advocate in the Senate to further strengthen the bill and ensure it aligns with First Nations rights. We want to thank our colleagues from the AFN executive as well on the issue, including Chief Benedict. We met last week to discuss the issue and the recommendations. Clean water is a necessity. It's not a privilege. And without it, there is no health, no prosperity, and no future. Just to close off, I want to say that our sacred connection to water is another reason First Nations must be at the table in the upcoming negotiations between Canada and the US government. Last week, the Prime Minister and the Premiers met to discuss the future of Canada's economy and our relations with the United States. They agreed to establish a Team Canada approach to the new U.S. reality. While we support these discussions, we want to make it very clear to First Nations and First Ministers in this country and to all Canadians that going into 2025, a Team Canada approach to U.S. relations without First Nations at the table is not a Team Canada. So our involvement is crucial, not only in terms of water and territorial stewardship, but also for the unique economic opportunities that can drive economic growth within our borders. At this critical time in Canadian history, it is important that we remind federal and provincial governments of the Crown's duty to involve First Nations in all matters that can impact our rights, lands, our livelihoods, and the interest of our people. The issue at hand is not just about economic transactions. They're about national security, about border integrity, and in maintaining sovereignty, especially in the Arctic, where our presence has been a foundation of Canadian claims. So today we are calling upon the Prime Minister and the Premiers to include the voices of First Nations in the dialogue now. We also want to lift up chiefs that are working so hard to create opportunities for sustainable growth and job creation in your territories. It was great to see so many of you here this week. We had thousands of participants this week. It's been unprecedented. High attendance at our July and October assemblies. It is great to see the Assembly of First Nations alive and well. And it is great to see so many diverse nations full of passion regarding the issues that matter most to First Nations in this country. This week, we have shown again that the AFN is energized by diverse opinions. And we have shown again that we're an assembly unified behind a common belief that First Nations families must be empowered to care for our own children. We are thankful for the Chief's ongoing work relating to long-term reform of Canada's child welfare system. As your National Chief, I will continue to work with our National Executive to follow through on your directions and your resolutions you have been debating and voting on this week. Just to close off, everywhere we have traveled in my first year as National Chief, we hear constantly that it's time to put First Nations in charge once and for all. So I want to thank you again to all the chiefs and the communities that have welcomed us to their territory over the past year. We look forward to visiting more in the coming year, and across this country, First Nations leaders are you're leading difficult discussions, shining a light on solutions because we can. So as busy as we have been in 2024, we are just getting started. In 2025, we'll humbly carry forward Justice Sinclair's legacy by lifting up the 10th anniversary of the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action. We will fight for the return of our stolen artifacts and hold governments accountable for their actions. We will participate in a federal election where First Nations voices and your votes will matter. Chiefs, it's been my honor, my absolute honor, to serve as your National Chief. 1 year ago at this location, you elected me to be your advocate to people in this country, to governments, to organizations, to advance your priorities, to take your voices forward. And I'm so grateful for your advice, for your wisdom, for your support over the past year. We're excited to keep this work going. But I also just want to say on behalf of my Nepinak and Woodhouse family, we wish you all a safe and relaxing holiday season. You work hard, Chiefs, and we need you healthy and rested for 2025 and all the things that we are going to do together. So please accept our deep love, my family's best wishes for this holiday season. And I want to also thank my dad who came with me this week. There's so much that we can do ahead, but I want to thank him. He prays for us every day, and I'm so glad I was raised by a strong leader and a strong chief. And I feel sorry for chief's daughters out there, because you got a lot of hard work and heavy work to carry on you as you grow up. Like that little girl who walked us in today, or walked us in 3 days ago. I look to those young people that are coming up, and they inherit what we leave for them. So I want to thank us as we move forward in a respectful, kind dialogue with each other. And it's okay if we debate. That's healthy. I'm glad we're here now. We've come a long way over the past year, and we have many issues to go through in 2025 and beyond. So, Chimigwech, and I want to thank you all so very, very much. Hi.
Continue with closing protocol. I would invite Knowledge Keeper Chartrand.
Thank you all. We have done our ancestors proud. We have. We've spoke with our passion and our heart fire for our communities and our leadership, and we're in good hands. I would like to say the prayer. Creator, we thank you for this time that we have shared together on the unceded traditional lands of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe. We have welcomed you here, and we have accepted the kindness that you have shared with us, and it is indeed our honor to host you here. Creator, we ask you to look after everyone as they make their journey home to their loved ones. And when they get home and sit around that table and share in that meal with them loved ones, the little ones that are happy to see you come home, we ask you to remember the tables that do not have the people there, but empty chairs. And today, as we conclude the 3 days, Creator, let us all know in our hearts that we have done something good for our fellow man, our fellow woman, our fellow person, our fellow children. Let us all be thankful for each other and for sharing our words, and we will meet again, for we are the people of this land. And I say safe journey home, miigwech, and thank you.
So I'll now ask our drum group to play a song, after which the 2024 Assembly of First Nations Special Chief Assembly will be officially adjourned.